Suppose a teenager walked into an agency office and walked out with a new life already being negotiated by adults she barely knew. A flight could be arranged, a photographer could be called, an apartment could be assigned, a campaign could make her visible before she understood who controlled the room behind the image. That was the supermodel era beneath the magazine covers and runways. Glamorous in public, controlled in private. John Casablancas helped build that world. He founded Elite in Paris, fought older agencies, raised fees, turned models into celebrities, and made discovery global. He also helped normalize an industry where youth, access, money, and male authority sat dangerously close together. The legend made him a visionary. The record makes that legend much harder to defend. John Casablancas was born in New York in 1942 into a life shaped by movement, money, and European social codes. His parents had left Spain during the Civil War. His father worked in textile machinery. His mother had modeled for Balenciaga. Casablancas was sent to La Rosey, the Swiss boarding school known for educating wealthy families, then moved through several European universities without finishing a degree. Before modeling became his arena, he worked in public relations and marketing, including a period in Brazil with Coca-Cola. The resume helps explain part of his later success. He understood image before he managed models. He understood how a person, a brand, and a fantasy could be packaged for people who wanted to buy into a world. The modeling business already had rulers. Ford models and Wilhelmina carried major commercial weight in New York, where fees and magazine exposure were higher. European agencies often developed girls, then watched them leave for the American market. Casablancas later described that setup as a feeder system. Modeling histories describe a similar pattern: informal partnerships between cities, routine poaching, and constant anxiety that another agency would sign a model once she traveled abroad. His first Paris agency grew out of a smaller operation encouraged by Danish model Jeanette Christiansen, who later became his second wife. The agency became Elite in the early 1970s. Some sources date the founding to 1971. Elite's corporate history uses 1972. By the early 1970s, Casablancas had built Elite in Paris and saw a weakness older agencies had left exposed. That weakness was control. The American agencies had it. The European agencies wanted more of it. Casablancas entered a business already organized around gatekeeping, then made the gate larger, brighter, and more profitable. The older agencies also sold a specific promise to parents. They could say the girl would be supervised, introduced to respectable clients, and kept inside a controlled environment. That promise was imperfect, and it could feel suffocating, but it gave the business a respectable language. Casablancas understood that respectability had limits. A new generation wanted movement, nightlife, money, and proximity to fame. He turned the old permission structure into something that felt like choice. Eileen Ford ran Ford models with a strict moral order. Models had chaperones. Curfews were part of the culture. The agency offered discipline, protection, and surveillance in the same package. Ford's system could feel paternalistic, especially for young women treated less like workers than daughters on loan to fashion. Casablancas sold the opposite mood. Elite offered nightlife, movement, European glamour, and the suggestion that modeling could open a larger social world. Ford told models to behave. Elite told them they could become famous. That pitch looked like liberation, and in some ways it created real gains. Elite helped models earn more money and build public identities. Casablancas understood that a model with a name, a personality, and a press profile could command more than a silent figure in a dress. He was early to the idea that a model could sell herself as much as the clothes. The dependency remained. A model needed the agency for bookings, introductions, travel, housing, and reputation. She needed someone to send her to the right photographer, editor, and client. Freedom became the surface language. Access remained the business. The model wars taught the industry a lesson about value. Once agencies saw that a single face could generate headlines, lawsuits, and bidding wars, the model became a more expensive asset. That could benefit a woman whose name was already powerful. It could also make everyone around her more possessive. A career that looked spontaneous from the outside was often managed minute by minute by people whose income depended on controlling her availability, body, and next booking. When Casablancas opened Elite's New York office in 1977, the fight with Ford became public. Time covered the conflict as the model wars, raids, lawsuits, defections, and counterattacks. Casablancas took staff and models from Ford. Ford attacked his character. The rivalry pushed fees upward for top models, while agencies fought harder to control the careers that had become valuable. Casablancas also knew how to use conflict as publicity. The feud with Ford gave journalists a clean story: old discipline against new glamour, chaperones against nightclubs, rules against appetite. That framing helped Elite look modern even when its business still depended on control. A model reading the coverage could see the agency as the more exciting side of the industry. A parent might see risk, a client might see heat. Casablancas benefited from all three reactions because attention made Elite feel like the agency where something was happening. Casablancas challenged an older form of control, then replaced it with a version better suited to the media age. Less curfew, more champagne. Less dormitory discipline, more celebrity. The agency still held the keys.
Elite's real innovation was structural. Before Casablancas expanded aggressively, an agency could develop a model in one city and lose her when she traveled to another. A girl sent from Paris to New York might sign with a local competitor. The agency that invested early could watch another firm collect the reward. Casablancas built around that problem. Elite could move a model through its own network. Paris, New York, Milan, and other markets became parts of one system. Discovery, development, booking, placement, and publicity could stay under one brand. For the agency, that meant less leakage. For the model, it meant more opportunity tied to one powerful gatekeeper. The results shaped fashion history. Elite and Casablancas were connected to Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelista, Claudia Schiffer, Stephanie Seymour, Heidi Klum, Tyra Banks, Gisela Bündchen, Christy Brinkley, and Nadja Auermann. The details of each career differ, and Elite cannot receive credit for every achievement by every woman it represented. Still, the agency benefited from the collective image of those names. It sold access to the faces that defined the era. Casablancas understood that media had changed the market. Fashion magazines counted, but so did television, music videos, gossip columns, and late-night celebrity culture. A model could become recognizable outside fashion. Her name could make a campaign feel bigger. Her personality could become part of the product. Look of the Year, launched in 1983 and later renamed Elite Model Look, gave Elite a global intake system. The contest drew teenage contestants from many countries and turned scouting into spectacle. A local girl could enter a competition and leave with a contract that seemed to place her inside the center of fashion. The offer carried enormous promise. It also brought young recruits into a business whose rules were often learned after arrival. The contest format protected the agency's image. A competition has judges, stages, finalists, and winners. It looks cleaner than a private recruitment network. Parents could understand it. Local press could celebrate it. Sponsors could attach themselves to it. Once the competition ended, the winner entered the same opaque business as everyone else. The public ceremony ended at the moment when private negotiations began. For a teenager, especially one coming from another country, the agency could become everything at once. It arranged castings. It suggested test shoots. It placed her in shared housing. It advanced money, then deducted expenses. It shaped the language used around her, promising difficult commercial editorial worth investing in or no longer worth the trouble. The power of that system also came from its informality. A contract could say one thing while daily life taught another. The model learned which booker controlled the best castings, which photographer could make a season easier, which editor could turn a new face into a campaign candidate. None of those lessons arrived in a handbook. They arrived through rooms, dinners, calls, favors, disappointments, and the quiet knowledge that someone else always knew whether you were useful. Those labels traveled faster than paperwork. A model could feel the consequences of displeasing the wrong person without any formal firing. A booker could stop pushing her. A client could stop seeing her. A rumor could do the work of a policy. The structure made silence practical. Casablancas was unusually open about his attraction to young women. Major profiles and obituaries treated this as part of his public reputation. They quoted his language. They described his relationships. They folded his conduct into the image of a charming, reckless, suntanned founder who broke rules and got away with it. The public relationship with Stephanie Seymour made that imbalance impossible to miss. In 1983, The Guardian and the Los Angeles Times placed Seymour at 16 and Casablancas at 41. Other later accounts suggest his interest began earlier, when she was around 15. Either way, the central fact stays the same. Seymour was a teenage model, and Casablancas was a married agency founder in his early 40s. The relationship was written about, criticized, and still absorbed into the mythology around him. The point is the imbalance. A teenage model, a powerful adult agent, and an industry that treated the relationship as scandalous color instead of a professional crisis. Journalists wrote about it. Rivals condemned him. Eileen Ford called him sleazy. The affair still became part of his legend. A 1988 New York profile captured the discomfort in real time. Casablancas' own language about young women already sounded unsettling, even inside an industry used to excusing powerful men. The warning signs were not hidden in private rooms or discovered only decades later. They were printed, discussed, and then folded back into his reputation as charm, danger, and appetite. That is what makes the Seymour relationship so revealing. The facts do not need embellishment. A man in his early 40s controlled one of the most powerful agencies in modeling, while Seymour was still a teenager building a career inside that world. The industry had enough information to understand the imbalance. It treated the imbalance as part of his personality. A similar pattern appeared in his marriage to Aline Wermelinger. Casablancas married her in 1993 when she was 17. The Guardian reported that he had met her as a schoolgirl entrant in an elite contest in Rio. Once again, the personal and professional worlds were hard to separate. The founder, the contest, the teenager, and the marriage all belonged to the same elite universe. In 2002, another allegation entered the public record. A former model filed a civil lawsuit in Los Angeles, accusing Casablancas of serious misconduct beginning when she was 15, connected to the 1988 Look of the Year competition. Casablancas' lawyer denied the allegations and called them fabricated. The California case was dismissed on jurisdictional grounds because Casablancas lived outside the state, so the claims were never tested at trial. Years later, Gerald Marie would become the name attached to a different set of allegations inside the elite world. The connection between the two men is institutional, not proven personal direction. Casablancas built and glamorized a structure where senior executives could hold enormous informal authority over young workers. Marie later held that authority in Europe, and the allegations against him belonged his own legal record, with his denials included. That is what makes this history so uncomfortable. Casablancas did not need total secrecy to survive public criticism. The industry could see troubling conduct, joke about it, condemn it in passing, and still keep treating it as part of the show. Gerald Marie was a central elite executive. He had built influence at Paris Planning, a French agency, before Paris Planning merged with Elite in 1986. After that merger, Marie became Elite's European president. That title gave him extraordinary reach. Later reporting by 60 Minutes Australia and CBS described him as someone who could make or damage a model's career through a phone call. In a relationship-driven industry, access to editors, photographers, and major clients carried a kind of power that rarely appeared on paper. Marie also married Linda Evangelista in 1987. They divorced in 1993. Evangelista stood at the center of the supermodel era, which makes the connection difficult to separate from the larger elite story. The later scandal did not sit at the margins of fashion. It reached the same rooms, names, and institutions that produced the era's most famous images. The system Marie entered had already been shaped by Casablancas. Professional authority and personal access sat close together. Models depended on agency housing, agency introductions, agency travel, and agency approval. A foreign teenager in an agency apartment experienced power through rent, castings, visas, debt, and the fear of being sent home with nothing. Allegations against Marie entered a new public phase in 2020, when French prosecutors opened an investigation after complaints from former BBC journalist Lisa Brinkworth and 3 former models. Further reporting named women including Carey Otis, Jill Dodd, Eva Carlson, Wendy Walsh, and Shauna Lee. CBS later reported that 15 women had gone to French authorities by June 2022 and 16 by February 2023. Marie denied the allegations. In February 2023, French prosecutors closed the criminal investigation because the alleged conduct from the 1980s and 1990s fell outside the statute of limitations. No trial followed. No court verdict resolved the allegations. That ending left the story in a familiar place for the modeling industry, many women speaking years later. Legal clocks running out. and no independent body from the period with the power to investigate what happened when the careers of young models depended on men at the top. In November 1999, BBC One aired an episode of McIntyre Undercover focused on Elite. The program used undercover reporting, Lisa Brinkworth embedded in the industry. Donald McIntyre posed as a photographer. The broadcast showed Marie in footage described at the time by The Guardian. He was secretly filmed in a nightclub setting, apparently offering Brinkworth about £300 for sex. He was also shown speaking to McIntyre about teenage finalists in Elite model look. Another Elite executive, Xavier Moreau, appeared making racist remarks. The broadcast caused immediate pressure. Casablancas issued an unreserved apology for the behavior shown by Elite staff. Senior executives, including Marie, were suspended. For a brief period, Elite faced public scrutiny over conduct inside its own ranks. Then Elite sued the BBC for libel. The case shifted the ground. In 2001, the parties settled. The BBC acknowledged that Elite, as an organization, had been unfairly portrayed in one's respect. The program had not reflected that Elite warned and sought to protect young teenage models from sexual exploitation and drugs. Elite acknowledged that sexual remarks by some executives were inappropriate. The Guardian reported that the settlement followed a long legal fight and that Marie and another executive had been reinstated after their suspensions. The legal fight changed the shape of the scandal. What began as a televised investigation into Elite's internal culture became a battle over editing, fairness, broadcaster conduct, and libel. The footage had raised serious questions, but the settlement gave the agency a way to answer those questions without a wider industry reckoning. After the settlement, attention moved away from what Elite executives had said on camera. The public argument became easier to contain. The pipeline continued. The contest continued. Marie remained influential. The agency survived a moment that, under different pressure, might have forced a deeper accounting of how its most powerful men operated. The BBC episode marked a break in the public story around Elite. Before 1969, much of the criticism around the agency could be dismissed as gossip, rivalry, or fashion nightlife excess. After the broadcast, the public had footage, a famous agency, a named executive, and a national broadcaster standing behind an undercover investigation. The settlement did not erase the footage. It changed the terms around it. The program also developed a strange afterlife. Millions had seen the broadcast, but the legal resolution made rebroadcast difficult and turned it into something many people remembered without being able to easily review. That gap helped later confusion grow. Some remembered the footage, others knew only the lawsuit. For models who later spoke publicly, the earlier investigation became a painful marker. The warning had already surfaced, and the system had continued. The result was chilling because it moved through procedure, not drama. No villain pressed a switch. No single meeting erased the story. A powerful agency used the legal tools available to it. A broadcaster retreated on part of its framing. Fashion moved on. The modeling industry reformed slowly. Pressure came from advocates, surgeons, journalists, former models, and lawmakers who treated modeling as labor rather than atmosphere. Model Alliance published a major survey in 2012. The findings were blunt. Many models began working before 16. Many under 18 worked without a parent or guardian present. Respondents described pressure around weight, mental health strain, surprise nudity, and sexual harassment. Those findings gave numbers to experiences that had long circulated privately. The economic structure made vulnerability worse. Agency apartments could place young models in crowded housing while keeping them financially tied to the agency. Test shoots, portfolios, travel, website fees, drivers, and other charges could be deducted before a model saw real income. A girl might arrive believing she had been chosen for a glamorous career, then learn that she was already in debt. Debt changes choice. So does distance from home. So does being 16 in a country where you do not know the language. The agency can be your employer, landlord, scheduler, creditor, and reputation manager at the same time. A young model who feels unsafe may still calculate that leaving means losing money, status, immigration stability, and the one chance everyone told her not to waste. New York extended child performer protections to models in 2013. Before that change, underage models in New York lacked the same protections as child actors. The CFDA expanded its health and safety work in 2017 and 2018 to address sexual harassment and assault more directly. Those reforms came late, but they show that basic protections had remained unresolved for decades. The delayed reforms also challenge easy nostalgia. The supermodel era is often remembered through control that looked empowering. A model refusing bad money, choosing campaigns, becoming known by one name. That happened for a small group at the top. Below them were new faces trying to reach the same height while accepting whatever terms the industry placed in front of them. Glamour at the summit never described conditions at the entry point. Linda Evangelista later gave the story another public connection to the supermodel era's center. In 2020, she said she had known nothing of the sexual allegations against Marie during their marriage, and that she believed the women who came forward. In the 2023 Apple TV Plus series The Supermodels, she described the marriage itself as abusive. Marie's legal representatives objected to that characterization. Evangelista's comments placed the story close to the center of supermodel history without shifting blame onto her. Responsibility belongs with the person accused, never with a former spouse. Her presence shows how close the alleged harm around Elite lived to the world that made supermodels famous.